आईआईसी के बोर्ड के ट्रस्टीज़ और सदस्य, आईआईसी के निर्देशक श्री के एन श्रीवास्तव जी, विराजमान अतिथिगण, भाइयों और बहनों, संविधान दिवस के पावन अवसर पे मैं आईआईसी की ओर से और अपने व्यक्तिगत रूप से माननीय उपराष्ट्रपति जी का हार्दिक स्वागत करता हूं, अभिनंदन करता हूं। Honorable Vice President, sir, the Constitution Day is an occasion for all Indians to celebrate one of the most precious legacies of our long and arduous struggle for freedom, but also of India's rich history and plural culture, which finds reflection in the Constitution. The Constitution is steeped in India's cultural particularities, innate sensibilities of its people, but it is also a forward-looking guidepost to India's future as a modern, secular, and liberal democracy. It is the basis of our governance structure and the sentinel of the fundamental rights of our people. Sir, you have had a very long and distinguished career in the legal profession. You have been a member of the Lok Sabha, the governor of one of India's most important states, West Bengal, and are now occupying the second highest office of the Indian Republic. But more importantly, as chairman and presiding officer of the Rajya Sabha, you are the upholder of the Constitution and the protector of constitutional propriety. We are privileged, therefore, to hear your learned insights into the subject you will be delivering your Constitution Day address on, that is, the Constitution of India and Indian democracy. Have the Legislature, Judiciary, and Executive remain true to their respective constitutional mandates? This is a most relevant question in Indian political and intellectual discourse today. We are eager to hear your thoughts on an issue which goes to the very heart of the doctrine of checks and balances, but equally of all three organs of the state working together cooperatively to advance the public interest. Mahamin ji, may I invite now your Honorable Vice President to please kindly address us.
Very good evening to all of you. It is virtually for me a dream come true. More than any position which I may have held in the profession or otherwise, this honor is above all those positions. Shri Shyam Saran ji, President India International Center, very eminent trustees of the IIC, Shri K. N. Srivastava, Director, distinguished audience. When I look around, I find many who I know and many who know of me. So the setting is very different. It is an absolute privilege to be on this impactful platform of prestigious India International Center. It is indeed my honor to address the august audience here, and the message that will go by virtue of IIC elsewhere on this momentous occasion of the Constitution Day. And while we all are in Amrit Kal of our independence, India International Center, of which I became a member in 1990, since its foundation days has been significant epicenter of deep thoughts, constructive ideation, as also interactions and conversations on issues of national and international importance. There is national and global recognition and appreciation, and very rightly so, of the IIC as conducive and engaging platform for the thinking minds who are ever keen to reflect on issues of moment and great contemporaneous relevance. Grateful to the IIC for enabling me to unfold my thoughts on this day, on this platform. Best wishes and greetings to all of you and all the countrymen on the Constitution Day. It was on this day in 1949 when independent India laid the foundation for a new future for itself. Many in the world thought India would not last long. They wrote about it, reflected in public domain, and we have traversed for so long, are in 75th year of our independence, as a shining star on the global horizon. This time, Constitution Day is very special on this count also. Completion of 75 years for mother of democracy and the largest democracy is indeed a milestone we can all be proud of. In the journey of 75 years, our institutions, the legislature, the judiciary, and the executive, are performed in exemplary manner. They addressed issues that have taken us to this level. Performance has been commendable. Judiciary in particular, even towards the end of the last century, engaged into innovation to impart justice to the people at large. I particularly congratulate the Honorable Supreme Court today for adopting technology to ensure ease of justice through initiatives like virtual justice, clock, digital courts, etc. This beginning has been made today. We cherish one of the finest constitutions in the world. Members of the Constituent Assembly were enormously talented with impeccable credentials and immense experience. The Constituent Assembly, given the scenario then, was as representative as was practicable. This is an issue on which my young friends in particular can focus. But given those times, it could not have been more representative than it was. But with each election, there has been progressively authentic enhancement in the representation gradient. Presently, the Parliament reflects with authenticity the will, aspirations, and ordainment of the people as never before. Synergic functioning of legislature, judiciary, and executive, the three obvious facets of governance vital for democracy, and this is constitutional mandate. This has been happening in our country that results in success of our democracy. There is always room for improvement. The sublimity of doctrine of separation of powers, and this doctrine, as all of you know more than I do, is very critical to success of democracy and an essential of good governance. This is realized when judiciary, legislature, and executive optimally function in tandem and togetherness, and with one qualification: meticulously ensuring scrupulous adherence to respective jurisdictional domain. Any incursion by one in the domain of the other, howsoever subtle, and howsoever perceptionally and apparently may be justifiable, has the potential to upset the apple cart of governance. Contemporaneous scenario on this count calls for a look by all who care for Bharat at their heart. The spectacle of incursions by one in the domain of the other is being reflected with concerning frequency in public domain. This trend, which is on the increase, we find each incursion hogging public domain limelight with high decibel media coverage. It is a time looking to the rise India is witnessing that all at the helm of affairs of these august institutions in the executive, the legislature, and the judiciary, they are required to seriously, very seriously, ponder and reflect so that there can be evolution of healthy, wholesome ecosystem in consonance with the spirit and essence of the Constitution. In the initial decades of our constitutional functioning, the doctrine of separation of powers and checks and balances worked well, by and large, wholesomely sustaining the constitutional equilibrium amongst legislature, executive, and judiciary. This has, however, been subjected to some kind of test or strain as a consequence of judicial verdict imparted by the highest court of the land. Undoubtedly, the highest court of the land and courts of record, the high courts, are possessed of the power by means of judicial review to invalidate administrative government action or a legislative enactment on the premise the same being repugnant of the Constitution. 1973 was a different year. There, in that year, in Keshwanand Bharati case, the Supreme Court asserted for the first time the right of the courts to strike down constitutional amendments that violated what is called the basic structure or the fundamental architecture of the Constitution. The most significant aspect is that a constitutional provision came to be struck down. So what emanated from the legislature was undone by the court. In subsequent years, the highest court delivered significant rulings on matters that it held pivotal to this basic structure. Most recent and prominent judicial manifestation of the basic structure doctrine was on 16th October 2015, when the highest court of the land in a 4-1 majority verdict held both the 99th Constitution Amendment Act 2014 and the National Judicial Appointments Commission Act 2014 unconstitutional on the premise of being in violation to the basic structure. Independence of judiciary, very rightly, being a facet of it. The history of sorts was created in the parliament, which normally on issues is sharply divisive. But with respect to the 99th Amendment Act, the constitutional amendment, there was complete unanimity in the Lok Sabha. There was not a single dissenting voice. The House of the People voted in unison in favor of this constitutional amendment. In Rajya Sabha, there was unanimity, but there was one abstention. Such kind of a scenario perhaps is unparalleled in the democratic history of the world. Those involved with world affairs know it. Even the Patriot Act after 26/11 did not get, 9/11 did not get that kind of support. Such massive mandate of the people reflected on the floor of Parliament was judicially neutralized by invoking the applicability of doctrine of basic structure. This judicially evolved doctrine of basic structure has been severely commented and somehow termed it as ex officio compromising the sovereignty of the Parliament. Any standoff between these vital wings of the Constitution certainly does not augur well for constitutional functioning. It is time, while we are in Amritkal of our independence, to reflect on the scenario with a view to overcome differences so that constitutional essence prevails. As Vice President of the country, on this significant day, to make this point, I could not have been at a more eminently suitable place. With this in mind, I seek to traverse the issues. The preamble of the Indian Constitution firmly imparts its foundation, its premise. We, the people of India, they are the fountainhead of power. So, ordainment of the people, reflected by way of sanctified mechanism through their representatives in legislature theatres, is supreme. If we go by the preamble of the Indian Constitution, which is part of the Constitution as per judicial declaration. This, according to me, is an inalienable spinal feature of the supreme document of governance, the Constitution of India. In this premise, parliamentary sovereignty is inviolable for sustainability and blossoming of democratic values. Its supremacy prevalence is non-negotiable, being quintessence to democracy and all that it stands for. Negation of such sanctified mechanism will be travesty of democratic values and outrage of the power of the people. Dislocation of this has potential to unsettle our democracy and adversely impact growth. Basic structured doctrine is rendered vulnerable on yet another count. It fails to subscribe to the rationale that no parliament can eternally and inexorably bind future parliaments. I don't wish to dilate much, that when we had our constitution from enormously talented people, the kind of representation we have now is far more vertical, horizontal, and authentic, and we are a billion more. There is widespread thought that there is compulsive need to revisit the judicially evolved mechanism or basic structure of the Constitution. There can be no other befitting place than this, that people who care for this country, constitute elite and intelligentsia, come from all segments of society, to brainstorm, find out in which democratic dispensations a verdict imparted by the Parliament amending the Constitution can be undone. I am sure the answer will be obvious. The architecture of the Constitution is not amenable to variation accepted by the people through their representatives, and that too by way of mechanism duly sanctified. Power of the Parliament of the day to act in exercise of its constituent power, it is spelled out. And what is spelled out in the Constitution is to amend by way of addition, variation, or repeal any provision of this Constitution in accordance with the procedure, this cannot be judicially qualified, diluted in any manner, including by invoking basic structure doctrine. I feel, having bestowed attention on the issue for quite long, negation of a constitutional provision evolved in a sanctified manner is beyond the purview of judicial attention. On this aspect, the thought process of founding fathers of the Constitution is discernible in one particular article, Article 145, Sub-Article 3 of the Constitution, and that article provides for minimum number of judges who are to sit for the purpose of deciding any case involving a substantial question of law as to interpretation of the Constitution, or for the purpose of hearing any reference under Article 143 of the Constitution, the number shall be 5, references from the President. The constitutional prescription unambiguously indicates that the Supreme Court may determine a substantial question of law as to the interpretation of this Constitution. Those who are involved with legal academics will find no difficulty that even after interpretation is accorded, Parliament, being sovereign, is the ultimate arbiter. It imparts, this provision, Article 145(3), jurisdictional limitations on the highest court of the land that extends to interpretation of the Constitution. On this occasion, very significant observations were made by Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, and what he said was, describing the Constitution, he said, it is not mere lawyer's document, but vehicle of life whose spirit is always the spirit of age. This bears relevance. I have seen for myself. You would know it more than anyone else. In my age group, we lived in times where we had no internet, no mobile, no typewriter of this kind, and electricity in village was also not there. There was evolution of what we used to call video library. It has disappeared. VCR and VCD used to be necessary gift in semi-urban and rural areas. That has vanished. We made great success of PCO booths. They have suddenly disappeared. And we could never imagine that we will have such a massive revolutionary development of digital world that every Indian will have a mobile in hand. Therefore, Constitution is dynamic and deals with practical situations. The instrument of change in the form of provisions for amendment make the Constitution a constantly evolving testament. The framers of the Constitution, with sagacious approach and deep devotion, had envisaged that situations will arise which will make it imperative upon legislation to amend the Constitution in consonance with need of the hour. They believed that legislature alone represents and articulates the will and concerns of the people. It is they who can feel the pulse of the people, and they are accountable for it. There's a mechanism whereby they come to represent and make suitable course corrections to meet the requirements of the country and the people, and thus this power to amend the Constitution was vested in the Parliament. Ever alive to the needs of the changing times and making use of this power to amend, the Indian Constitution has not remained static and has grown with time. We have had more than 100 constitutional amendments. And on this occasion, I can reflect what Darwin said. I quote him, "It is not the strongest of the species that survive, nor the most intelligent, but the one most responsive to change," unquote. Now, this power to amend the Constitution, of which the Parliament is sole repository, has been invoked. It has come to be invoked in effecting structural changes in the Constitution. I would make reference only to 4 of them. We didn't have Panchayat Raj in the Constitution as a part. We have it now as Part 9 of the Constitution. It has changed dramatically the governance at the village level. It has effected a sea change in development of village panchayats, a major structural change. Part 9, capital A, municipalities, and not in the time frame when these 2 events took place. Another has been added, Part 9, capital B, a spinal mechanism for the cooperative sector. On this day, while we are fully alive to the fundamental rights the Constitution imparted to us, but it was by way of an amendment of the Constitution the citizens were made alive of the fundamental duties, and that was Part 4, capital A. The parliamentary democracy, its functioning, its success in India has been a guiding light for other democracies in the world. We are fully alive to the situations elsewhere. We have spinally, strongly survived. The Constituent Assembly embodied sublimity, decorum, and discipline, exemplifying the highest standards of debate, discussion, and deliberations, all quintessential to flourishing and blossoming of democracy. There have been numerous instances where we go through the debates of the Constituent Assembly to know what the intent is. And one is amazed the depth of knowledge reflected therein and the level of awareness. Constituent Assembly was called upon to address many issues of bewildering complexities, very tough issues. Language issue was one such issue. Constituent Assembly navigated seamlessly these contentious issues by engaging in dialogue, healthy deliberations, involved debate, and friendly discussion. And the underlying philosophy was a deep urge to be consensual. The Herculean task of evolution of our Constitution was achieved without there being any disruption, any disorder, or any exhibition of unbecoming conduct in or outside the Constituent Assembly theatre. The present scenario on this plank calls for introspection at the level of all concerned. Repeated disruptions in the Parliament, revealing a conduct that people find difficult to emulate, are issues that must engage mind of the intelligentsia, the opinion makers, the elite, the academia, so that there can be systemic correction. Without any further adverting on this, I call upon parliamentarians to exemplify their conduct that inspires people's admiration and emulation by drawing inspiration from framers of the Constitution. I am reminded, and I have gone through that address in full. In the Constituent Assembly, one of the towering giants of Indian politics, who became the first president of the Union, when he was elected as chairman, he made observations. I quote, he was elected as chairman, the first reflection by him. I quote, the work of this Constituent Assembly is most arduous and comes at a critical time. If we are sincere, if we respect each other's opinion, we shall develop so much insight that we will not only be able to understand each other's thoughts, but also be able to go deep to the root and understand each other's real troubles, unquote. These observations bear huge relevance today. The other point of view, which is very critical, is rejected for drop of a hat without consideration. My own experience shows that more often than not, the other point of view is the correct point of view. Reception of an idea in the spirit that was imparted by Dr. Rajendra Prasad is need of the times now. I have had the occasion to interact in my capacity as Chairman Rajya Sabha with large number of members of Rajya Sabha. They are enormously talented. Each of them has experience behind him, credentials. There is no reason for us not to succeed. There is no global entity of consequence in corporate world or otherwise that does not have a footprint of an Indian genius at the apex level. So, my dear friends, as the nation celebrates 75 years of independence, embodied in the spirit of Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav, we may look back at the profound transformations that have taken place in our country, which give us reason to be proud of and strive with a new resolve, new energy, and new strength towards a new India. I have ventured to reflect my thoughts with complete sincerity to myself, because I know anything coming from this platform will be viewed with sublime positivity. And I'm sure it will start a nerve center situation where we are in a position to affirmatively change the course of events. India is on the rise as never before. The upward upliftment is unstoppable. Only recently, few months back, on the size of our economy, we got the slot of 5th largest economy in the world, surpassing our erstwhile colonial rulers. It is only a matter of time. By the end of this decade, we will be the 3rd largest. India is a global destination of opportunities and investments. During my 2 recent visits abroad, I have felt that being an Indian is now very different. All these as a consequence of our functional democracy. This Constitution Day, let's pledge to promote the values enshrined in our Constitution and strive to build a Bharat that our founding fathers envisioned. I am grateful to this platform that I could pick up courage to speak out with sincerity. I am sure reaction from any quarter whatsoever will be after going through the entire content, the intent, because if as a nation, in the most difficult times, we are surviving as a shining star, it is because of our judiciary, our executive, and our legislature acting in tandem and togetherness. My indication and thought process is that this synergical approach needs to be optimized, refined, so that we claim the position which rightfully belongs to us, that is being Vishwaguru. Thank you so much. Grateful.
Honorable Uprashpati Ji, President of IIC, Honorable Trustees of IIC, ladies and gentlemen. We just heard a very eloquent, informative, inspiring, and motivating talk by Honorable Uprashpati Ji. While underlying the roles of the three organs of our democracy, that is executive, legislature, and judiciary, as enshrined in the Constitution, he also warned us against the deleterious effect on the functioning of our democracy if these three organs start intruding into each other's domains. He emphasized as to why it is very important and essential that the three organs have mutual respect for each other. Honorable Uprashpati Ji also reminded us that the Constitution, while on one hand endows us with fundamental rights, but on the other hand also reminds us of our fundamental duties in order to become a true and responsible citizen. Uprashpati Ji, who hails from a village in Jhunjhunu district of Rajasthan, indeed comes from a very humble background. Through his hard work, he not only excelled in his academic career, but also excelled in his professional career as an advocate. Because of his brilliance and competence, he was designated as a senior advocate at a very young age of 39 years. His accomplishments indeed would inspire all the aspiring youngsters. From his talk today, he has re-emphasized the importance of constitutional values as well as that of democracy in a proper and inclusive administration of our country. I am confident that with his legal experience and knowledge, as chairman and presiding officer of Rajya Sabha, he would not only be conducting the proceedings of the House in befitting manner, but would also be guiding and nudging the parliamentarians towards healthy and constructive debates in the Parliament. At our request, he has kindly agreed to become an honorary member of India International Center, for which the entire IIC family is grateful to him. On behalf of the IIC family, President of IIC, Shri Shyam Saran, and on behalf of all of you, ladies and gentlemen, as well as on my own behalf, I profusely thank Uprashpati Ji for sparing his time to be with us this evening and to deliver this important talk. We in the IIC look forward to his greater association with our programs and scholarly discussions in future. I also thank you all, ladies and gentlemen, for your gracious presence. Thank you all once again.